So we broadcast live most second and fourth Saturdays on Zoom, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We're looking to expand to more platforms, but that's it right now. At the end of each show, we do 30 minutes of transmission meditation, which is a free and potent group meditation of service to the world and of great personal benefit for those who practice it. We hope you'll stick around and join us. Anyone over the age of 12 is free to join. And now to today's topic, Maitreya and the Sword of Cleavage, understanding the polarization of our times. We hope you'll ask questions and we will try to answer all of them. So this is part one. There will be a part two in a couple of weeks. And today we're going to talk about these different topics. What is the Sword of Cleavage? Who is Maitreya? Who are the Masters of Wisdom? And how can we use this knowledge to have hope? Because really that's the bottom line. All of this is about hope and hope for the future. So let's dive in. So the very first thing we want to say right off the bat is just that we're witnessing an enormous polarization of society, of all societies across the globe on a scale never seen before. This is something really new. I mean, there have always been differences of opinion, and there have always been extremes in opinions. People can have very, very different opinions. But the change now is that we're seeing these differences of opinion really dividing societies. Like it's as though everybody is sort of migrating into sort of two camps almost across most issues. And so we'd just like to go through a brief introduction to this phenomenon by talking about some of the areas where we're seeing this increase in polarization. Megan and Dick, would you like to jump in?
Sure, I'll let Dick go first.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, we're seeing these kinds of separations in the world today where the have-nots are so separated now from the haves. The middle class in America, in the world, and in America, has almost disappeared. That's how much the wealth and poverty have polarized in these times.
Yeah, and we're seeing, we used to talk about the 1%. Well, now it's the 0.1 or the 0.01%.
Yes.
And that's just in a few decades. So the degree to which wealth keeps being siphoned off into a smaller and smaller percentage of the world's population is phenomenal. I mean, we've never had anything like this. They also give, if you look at some statistics in terms of talking about big companies or corporations, the difference in wage between the CEO and a regular worker, say back in the 70s or 80s, was maybe 50 times or maybe 100 times. Now it's thousands of times different. So even within, the relatively rich part of the world, we're seeing a great polarization, not to speak of the parts of the world which are just, going down.
Yes, and it creates a lot of tension, of course, doesn't it? I mean, the haves versus the have-nots, and the friction in between that creates can lead to such things as terrorism and worse. I mean, especially I think amongst the young, they see what's going on and realize intuitively that this is not right. Something has to be done. So what are we going to do? That's the question.
That's right. And because of the media, everyone can see how others are living. So you might be one of these children dragging a huge bag of I don't know what, and that's what you do every day. But someone around you will have a cell phone where you can see people on TikTok or wherever who have nice homes and nice clothes. And so you see that there's an alternative and you know that something else is possible. You're not just in the world of this is all there is. Yeah. And then in the area of the environment, we included this just because it's a topic that's very timely right now. It's in the news, it's in people's awareness, and that's a good thing. And the polarization that we see is that there are people who say there's no problem. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to change our policies, we don't need to change our economy. And then there are other people who are saying we need to change everything. So these are really very distinct points of view, and they create tension. Just as
one of the places where you notice that is in global warming. Some people say global warming is a myth. And some people, like the scientists, for the most part, say global warming is real and we need to take action now or it'll be too late. We're already losing some of the species of animals on this planet because of environmental changes. And so the global warming is a very contentious issue right now. And you see that separation, that polarization of thought on that topic.
That's right. Yeah. And I think it also causes people despair, especially young people who feel, what about my future? What about the future of my home, the earth? Yeah.
Yes, and they are, as per that photo, going out and protesting, and there's the online petitions and so on. And you can only hope that governments will listen in the end. And I think they will have to. The growing strength of the people's voice will make it imperative that governments listen to their people.
Right. Yeah.
Here's another great example of polarization, the political arena. Man, I mean, speaking of the United States, the Democrats have never been farther from the Republicans. I mean, they're both at extremes at this point and consequently fighting each other all the time. I don't think the separation has ever been any greater with the political points of view in the United States, especially among our senators and representatives in the government. Huge, huge polarization right now. And it's happening around the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Not so exaggerated in New Zealand, where I'm from. And in fact, during this whole pandemic situation, there's been an unusual display of unity. There's not been so much friction. Nevertheless, I can see that there's still quite a polarization. The right or the conservative have gone even a little bit further right, if anything. So, yeah.
And it makes it very hard for the business of government to get done when
Yes.
people can't agree, because they need to agree on the topics they're working on. Otherwise, they can't pass anything into law. They can't allocate funding. So it's a terrible impediment to the process of government, which is a terrible impediment to society. So it is a real problem.
Absolutely.
I think whatever the polarization, it is quite an extreme waste of energy, isn't it? Imagine if instead of fighting against each other, people endeavored to work together and find consensus. We've got all this energy available. Let's use it in a more constructive way.
And not just energy, but smarts, all the smarts. When I get these scam phone calls, that you get a phone call with a voice telling you that you have to send $1,000 to this or that. And I always think, wow, whoever's doing this is investing time, energy, and mental smarts into setting up these scams. If we could get all these people to work on ending hunger or on world peace, maybe we'd have a chance.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, war and peace is another one. I mean, we just can't seem to end wars on this planet. And, I think a lot of it is about greed, about wanting oil, about wanting natural resources that belong to somebody else. Some of it is just plain old power moves. People want power. They want to be able to exercise their authority over other people. This is just an age-long process for humanity, but now the people that want peace are speaking up much more. And so now that polarization is becoming more evident.
I think with modern technology, none of us can escape what's going on in the world at the moment. It's on our big screens. We see war in full color and size, and it's even more impactful than it would have been in the past when technology wasn't so widespread and effective. It really is making it super clear to us, don't you think, that war is certainly not the way to go. Look at the horrible harm it creates. It does not solve anything. It just creates more problems.
It just destroys. That's right. Yeah. And an issue that's become very, has been spotlighted over the last years, racism, which it's not to say it didn't exist before, but it's come into the public consciousness in a way that it never had previously, perhaps during the time of the civil rights movement in the United States. But I think there's a focus on it now which is dealing with all of the subtleties. There's new vocabulary now. We talk about microaggressions, for example. Things people do that seem benign or harmless, but aren't. Ways of talking, ways of behaving. So here also there's a great polarization. There are people who say there's no problem. And I don't want you teaching my children about this in school, for example. So there's a huge gap between those who say this is an urgent problem, an important problem, and people who are saying there is no problem. And that is very similar to the polarization around the environmental issues.
I think a lot of racism is based on fear of the other, something that we don't understand. We weren't brought up with it. We're not familiar with it. And so we don't want to know about it. No, that's, I think, to do with the LGBTQ community as well. People are fearful of someone that's different from themselves, and so on. So we need to sort of tackle that whole issue of fear ultimately. And I mean, hopefully transform that into love of each other, see that we are all essentially the same. We certainly have differences, but at heart, we want the same things in life.
And almost all these areas of polarization that we've talked about so far could fall under the umbrella of social justice and social injustice. And there are a lot of people clamoring for greater social justice in most countries of the world now, and across the globe. And that is going to affect all of these, but we're seeing the polarization. The more people clamor for social justice, the more some people fight against that. The conservatives, typically, ultra conservatives especially, fight against that in each of these areas that we've discussed so far.
Then there's something that's very topical for all of us right now, and that's the question of vaccination. So everyone's familiar with the differences in opinion about vaccination, not just about vaccination for COVID, but vaccination in general. And for one, I was very shocked when I first found out that there are people who really think vaccination is a bad thing, since I'm one of the people who think it's a good thing. But it's been very enlightening to see that there are such different beliefs about it. And people feel very strongly. Very strongly, yes.
Yeah. And often it's people we know and we've known for many years. And it's interesting, really. It's how it's sort of split people up within families and groups. And it's good for us, though, to try and see the other point of view and understand where it comes from. How did they come up with that perspective? Sometimes it can be because there's a big distrust of authority of whatever sort. And where did that come from? Well, perhaps in the past they had bad experiences, even with doctors, politics, and so on. So it probably helps if we try and understand rather than just immediately have that sort of them and us attitude, which is, of course, a problem we've always had in history, this whole, I'm right, you're wrong sort of perspective.
Yes, and I think it's important to let our listeners and viewers know that we're not insulting or denigrating either side of this polarization argument. We're just pointing out the differences. We're not making anybody right or wrong about it. We're just saying these differences really exist. They're absolutely noticeable in our world today.
Okay, and I'm seeing we have some questions and comments. I'm just looking at them right now in the chat. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's a question or it's more a comment. It looks like Jacob Sabat has comments about, one of the comments is about the issue of being informed or not. And I think that we will be talking about that a bit later in the program, about the function of...
Now you're bringing in the polarization of the media. This media tells this truth and this media tells this truth. And so which truth do you go for? Which facts are accurate? So the polarization in the media, which is not one of the slides that we're going to put up here, is very, very real now as well.
Right. And so I'll just go to the last slide about the polarization, reproductive rights.
Good.
And that's been a topic in the news for a while now. And many of us thought that it wasn't a topic until recently. So again, it's been a discovery to find out that many of your fellow inhabitants of the earth have a very different point of view about things. And as you say, Megan, it's very good to find out why and to try to understand that rather than to condemn people for simply having a different opinion.
The voices of both sides of these arguments are getting louder. And that's where we're really starting to notice the polarization, the separation of people on the planet and their ideas now.
Yes.
I think it's healthy to have debate, but it's how we have that debate. Really, we need to be more reasonable and let each other have their say and listen. Listening is not a skill that's very well exercised usually by most of us. And I'm still learning about that too, because I felt a little bit sort of up in arms that there's people that, you know, for example, don't want to be vaccinated. And I'm now thinking, well, I think I understand why they have that point of view. And as someone said in the comments here, unity and diversity, there's room for people to have different perspectives, but we need to find a way to accommodate those different views and come to a compromise rather than have this hard and fast them and us.
It's the demonization of the other that really causes the problems.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a question we also have from someone who's watching today saying, religion has been teaching hope for thousands of years. How can we have greater confidence that hope will be soon? And so that also we're going to address. So we're going to go right ahead now and start talking about the Sword of Cleavage, which is what we're going to discuss and use to explain this polarization. And so we first want to talk about the origin of the word, the Sword of Cleavage, because it sounds very martial, doesn't it? Using the word sword. So the first place this was talked about is actually in the Bible, in the New Testament. Excuse me, in Matthew 10, 34, 35, and so on, where Jesus said, do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. And that's been very hard to understand, I think, in general, for most of us, because it just doesn't make any sense. What do you mean? Isn't the teaching of Christianity brotherhood, treat each other as we want to be treated, love your neighbor? Why are you talking about a sword, in the midst of all that? And then he goes on to say, for I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother. So we want to talk about this and explain what this is about, really. What is this sword? And
yes, now this, excuse me for interrupting, this was Jesus talking. And right. Most of the Bibles, I used to teach Bible study, most of the study Bibles in their notes, they talk about the fact that people will be divided over what Jesus said. There'll be those that think it made sense, and there'll be those that rebel against it. And in his time, certainly a lot more people rebelled against it. But it goes farther than that when one starts to pay attention to something that's coming to light now called the Ageless wisdom teachings. We see that this doesn't just mean during Jesus' time, it means during our time too. And so we're going to take a look at the Ageless wisdom view of the Sword of Cleavage.
Right. And so this is the updated description, if you will. And this is something that the great teacher Maitreya says, and we'll talk more about who Maitreya is just shortly. And he says, my coming brings peace. Likewise, my presence brings cleavage. Now, cleavage means separation. My sword, that love which I am, will separate all men, will show the true from the false, will clear the way for the new light which I bring. What's interesting here is he's saying, my sword, that love which I am. So he's connecting the two, that this sword and this love are the same thing. And so that's really the topic of today's program.
Right, and that the purpose of this separation is to show the true from the false and help us decide for ourselves.
Yes. Which one is which?
Make the options clear.
excuse me. And so now we're going to just answer that question. What is the sword of cleavage? And it's a very simple answer. It's the energy of love. Excuse me, I need to cough for a moment, so please go ahead.
While you're coughing, I'll just say that when we talk about the energy of love, we're not talking about romantic love. We're not talking about sweaty palms and the heart beating faster and that kind of love. Yes, that is an aspect of love, certainly, but it's not the love that the ageless wisdom talks about and that we're talking about here today. We're talking about the neutral energy of love. Love is impartial, and that's where we're going to go.
Yeah, like anything, there's different levels. So you can start off with the very sentimental, personal type of love.
Yes.
Then you can broaden it to love of family, love of community, love of mankind. And it's probably hard for most of us to get used to the idea that love is actually this energy that holds the very particles of matter together. And maybe one day scientists will confirm that that's the case. But meanwhile, it's just something to get our heads around, this whole concept that love is so much more than what we've been brought up to understand it as being.
That's right. And so here's another statement about Maitreya, wielded by Maitreya, the sword of cleavage, the energy of love, sets brother against brother and tests the true divine consciousness of people everywhere. And we're going to say how that happens, why that happens. Why does this energy set people against each other and test people?
Yes.
So just a brief description of who Maitreya is. He's a spiritual teacher. He's what we call a master of wisdom, a person who has evolved like we are doing, as we are doing all the time, every day. But he's gone much, much farther ahead on this path of the evolution of consciousness. And so he has reached a level where he embodies unconditional love. Now, all of us, we all love streams out of us to the degree we're able to express it. Now, he's expressing it at that level. He's embodying unconditional love, which is a level that's far beyond what we're doing, but it's a great example. He's also the person expected by all of the world's major religions to come in a future time and to help humanity. So you can also see these predictions if you look into the teachings all around the world. And this person who's predicted to come in the future has a different name depending on which tradition you're seeing it in. For example, the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, Krishna for Hindus, Maitreya Buddha for the Buddhists, the Christ returning for Christians.
And the Messiah for the Jews.
And the Messiah for the Jews.
Right. And today, with the world connected globally by satellite communication, one teacher can come to fulfill all of those expectations, and that's who Maitreya is. Maitreya means the one who brings joy.
But he's here for everyone. Sorry, he's here for everyone, of course, isn't he? Not just those who subscribe to a religion.
Exactly. Religious or not.
That's right. And he said, in fact, that he's not here to start a new religion. We have enough religions as it is, and there are many to choose from. And if you're happy in the religion or the practice that you're currently involved in, then carry on, because he wants all of us to develop in our own way, in our own style, according to our own inner promptings. He says the true master is within. So he's not here to be a master of anyone. And when we talk about the masters of wisdom, of whom Maitreya is one, the word master here means that they have mastery over themselves. It's not at all about someone telling someone else what to do, because for the masters of wisdom, for these people who have reached this level of evolution, respecting the free will of everyone is the most important thing for them. Because they understand that none of us can really learn or grow unless we do it ourselves, on our own, in our own way. If we're doing it because someone told us to do it, it's not really going to take, and it doesn't really work. So there's no point really in that.
Yes, I think that's quite a lesson for us to learn, because we've probably been brought up, especially if we are part of a religion, to think that the religious teacher will tell us what to do. But in actual fact, they will advise us, the masters, Maitreya, when they are publicly amongst us, but it will still be up to us. We have to make the choices. We have to decide that their advice is sound and put it into practice. So it's not like passively looking on while they solve everything for us. Not at all. It's we are the ones who will solve our issues with advice from Maitreya.
And advice that we're free to take or not. I mean, it's always a choice. And that's really the operative word. Now, I've talked about masters plural. So who are the masters of wisdom? They are people like ourselves, like Maitreya. They've gone far beyond where we are. Excuse me. And we group them together in this way because they are working behind the scenes to help us. And the big news, if you will, is that they are going to come forward to live with us openly and work with us sort of side by side as we solve our problems in this coming time. Maitreya is at the head of that group, not not because he's telling them what to do, but because he's simply more evolved. And so I think the best way to understand it, or the way that works for me, is to think of a family. If you're an adult in a family, you have more experience and knowledge than a child. It doesn't mean you're always going to have a better idea about what to do. The child might have an intuitive idea that's better, but in general, you know more things. So for example, when you're going to cross a street, you know that traffic will be coming from either side. The child might not know that. So you will have the responsibility for the child, and therefore you have a different level of awareness. And in the same way, the masters of wisdom have a different level from us, and Maitreya has again a different level from them. But they work as a group, all of them.
Sorry, Dick, would you like to speak first?
Well, I'm just going to respond to that viewer with the question about religion talking about hope. And yes, that's true. Every major religion has talked about the hope, especially related to their promised teacher coming in the future, way in the future. Christians expect Jesus to return at the end of the world. The Buddhists are looking for Buddha way in the future. That's hope, but it's way in the future and doesn't really relate to people living now. However, the hope that the ageless wisdom brings, and that Maitreya, the world teacher for the age of Aquarius, brings, is that he is here now, waiting for the best time to come forward to help humanity by making suggestions. They won't force us to do anything ever. Our free will is sacred, but that hope is here now. And so this is a very immediate, everybody, I think, there's nothing official, but in my opinion, everybody will see Maitreya within the next 5 years. And he's going to be walking amongst us for the next 2,000 years. He's in a body that won't die, that doesn't need sleep, that doesn't need to eat. He made his own body. But these masters who are senior members of our spiritual kingdom are coming with Maitreya, many of them, and that's going to be immediate. That's not going to be off 1,000 years from now or whatever. This is now. So that's, I think, the difference in the hope of the ageless wisdom versus the hope of most of the world's major religions.
There's a question that's come up here. How can we reduce the tension in the world? And my personal view is that we all need to listen to each other more, including governments. I know that governments will often ignore if there's an issue going on and go with the mainstream viewpoint, but we actually need to listen to all parties, get round a table and discuss things. If you ignore something, you make it worse. It's just like if you've got a health problem, if you ignore it, it's just going to get worse. It's the same with groups in society. We've got to listen to each other if we're going to reduce tension and solve those issues.
Well, and in the same line as what you're saying, Megan, about listening to each other, we also, I think, need to understand that there isn't a one solution fits all kind of answer. We have to be willing to be adaptable and flexible and understand that different people need different things and make that possible rather than thinking we all have to fit into one cookie cutter version of being a person.
And I think it's a mistake to expect the tensions to be relieved soon by something that we do. The tensions are built into the action of the Sword of Cleavage. The tensions are built into the world right now to help us choose which way we want to go, because the tension comes from the two opposite polarized views in every aspect of life. So that tension is built in and is an impetus, is an encouragement to start making some changes and to make a decision one way or another. And so I think it's a positive tension in that respect.
But I think for a person individually, if you're feeling, so this is Chris Varma, thank you for asking this question on Facebook. I think that what an individual can do, for example, myself or you or any of us, is to understand this polarization that's taking place in the world as part of a process, as you were saying, Dick, which we're going to get into in more detail now.
Exactly.
And when you understand what that process is, then I think the tension diminishes for you personally, because you don't feel the sense of fear about this growing polarization and the tension in the world. And that can help reduce the tension in the world as well, if more and more people understand what's happening.
Yes.
I think in some instances it will take the presence of Maitreya and the masters to reduce tensions and to resolve issues, but there's no reason why we can't start now.
That's right. And there's one more question from Billy Sevchuk. Does this mean that the peace will only last 2,250 years and we will have to return to war again, referring to Maitreya being the world teacher for the next 2,250 years? No, because in fact, all of humanity, we are all in a process of evolving all the time. Our consciousness is changing all the time. And I'm sure all of us can see that if we look at who we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we see the changes. So this process continues lifetime after lifetime. And that I'm just introducing reincarnation there very, very quickly. But the idea of evolution of consciousness means that in 2,250 years, the human race will be a very different group of people than it is now. All of us will have changed so much that we'll really be thinking in different ways, functioning in different ways. Our societies will operate differently. Things will be really, really different. And I think if you just look back 2,000 years, you can see a similar change. That's one way to see it. 2,000 years ago, how did most of us live? What were we doing? What were our daily lives like? And what are they like now? So it's just a constant process of change into the future. There will always be a world teacher. After Maitreya, there will be another world teacher. So we'll always have help and guidance. We'll always be working with the masters of wisdom, probably more and more closely as we evolve ourselves and we can understand better what they're trying to show us or tell us.
It's like a high turn of the spiral, isn't it? Every 2,200 or so years. And with each age comes a new set of energies that stimulates us and motivates us to look at things differently and change our society. But it's not an instant thing. It's going to take time for change to happen.
Right on. So we'll go straight into talking about love, since the Sword of Cleavage is the energy of love. And well, what is the energy of love? Now, we all know love, as we've described briefly, about romantic love or family love, friendship love. There are many different types of love. But as an energy, the love itself as an energy, this is now taken from what Benjamin Creme says. He's the person through whom we've gotten our information about the Masters of Wisdom and Maitreya. We'll talk about Benjamin Creme a little more later on. But he says love is a powerful, active, magnetic force, and that it actually holds things together at the level of the atom and us, it is people, humanity. And that without this energy of love, our solar system, the galaxies, would disappear. And that sounds fanciful, perhaps, like a fairy tale. But what's interesting is that our ability to understand now energy and matter at the atomic and the subatomic level means that we're coming closer and closer all the time to really being able to perceive, measure, and quantify what these qualities are. So I think it's very interesting that we're at that stage now in terms of our ability with science And we can look at something like this, like the energy of love, and think about it in a different way than we traditionally have.
Yeah, if you have trouble picturing love as a magnetic force, just imagine it as the magnet that draws two people together who are in a love relationship. It's magnetic. It draws people together. People in the world that express great love are magnetic. People tend to gather around them. They tend to want to be with them. And that's the magnetism of the energy of love. But it goes way beyond that, as we show here in this slide, that it actually holds our solar system together, holds our cosmos together. It's a powerful, powerful, powerful energy, way beyond what we usually think of.
So true. And what's happening now, because of the approach of Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom coming closer and closer to us and to working with us, and their presence in the world, is that this energy of love is increasing in potency all the time. It's saturating the world. And the effect that it has on us, and this is really the crux of the whole thing, this is the explanation of the polarization, is that the effect of this energy of love is it makes us more of what we are, each of us, no matter what we are. It makes us more of what we are. And I wanted to just, a little aside here, I was thinking, well, why does the energy of love make you more of what you are? And what came to my mind is what I've perceived and seen with children, with animals, and I think we all experience it, and that is that when you give love, when you focus love on, for example, your pet, for example, they kind of come to life and they start to be more active, more alert, more engaged. And you can see almost like an expansion taking place. And I sometimes think, well, what about plants? You know, the more sunlight they get, the more they flourish and bloom. And so that's a very simplistic way that I use to understand, why does the energy of love make you more of what you are?
Yeah, it's very stimulating, whatever your point of view. So if you feel fear, it's probably going to be exaggerating your fear at the present time. But it's bringing issues up in yourself so that you then have to resolve them. And we can see that happening both personally and globally, where in this time of crisis in so many different areas. But as with a personal crisis, it gives you the opportunity to resolve the differences and to find a way to get on, or to solve whatever the issue is, whether it's environmental or to do with health, or to do with, in this case, in the Ukraine, with war and peace. I mean, we have to find a way to find harmony so that we can survive.
Yeah, and not destroy the planet. That's right. So what's interesting, and what is perhaps counterintuitive for many of us, is the idea that the energy of love stimulates everybody, makes them more. So if you are destructive as a person, you will become more destructive. This energy will increase that in you. If you want peace, this energy will increase that in you. And right now in the world, this energy, this stimulation is incredibly intense, and it keeps growing. And so that is what is, in a way, pushing all of us into a real sense of crisis, because we're seeing that more and more there's this huge gap opening up between people who think one way and people who think another way. And it sharpens these differences. And so the positive aspect here is that, and this is the reason why this energy is now streaming here onto the earth and causing all these changes, is that it has to make our options clear. We have to become aware of really what the choices are. And so we're being faced with a moment of choice. And I think this is something very important to emphasize, is that we're in a process that's leading somewhere. We're not just in a random kind of chaotic situation. There's actually a process going on. And seen from the point of view of the Masters of Wisdom, this process is leading us to choice, to a fundamental choice about the future on Earth.
One of the separations, one of the polarizations that's becoming more and more clear more and more clarified for humanity right now is the war in the Ukraine. I mean, if the decision is, do we want war or do we want peace? People see the devastation and the heartbreak and the horrible, horrible results of the war in the Ukraine live in color on their television every day. And people are becoming clearer and clearer that war is not the answer to anything and that they don't want war, they want peace. So this kind of outward demonstration really helps us clarify what we want.
That's right. It makes the choices very, very clear. That's right.
It seems that we need these extreme situations to be willing to make the big changes. I mean, I personally thought the pandemic would be enough, but clearly not. We've needed another big shock, horrible shock like this, for us to really sit up and take notice and acknowledge we've got to do something. We've got to make some big changes in how we structure our world.
Yeah, not only do we need to decide, but we need to act on our decisions.
That's right. And so, in a way, to put it very simply, we're going to have these choices made very clear to us, extremes between love and hate, between sharing and greed, between peace and war. I mean, it really is that stark. It really is that black and white.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of cleavage is a powerful, powerful tool for the world teacher Maitreya to use to encourage humanity to notice the differences and to make a choice.
And it's all done with love. Like I know,
yes.
For example, Christians would think, why does God allow war? Well, the reason for all the strife is so that we can learn. We have to do things of our own volition. We can't just have things dealt with for us. This is how we grow, how we evolve, so that we too can become masters, truly divine beings. Well, we are at heart, but to actually express that in our ways of life.
Yes, we have free will. God doesn't make war. God doesn't make peace. We do. And it's our job. Yes, we can be taught. Yes, we can have guidance from higher sources, but we have to make the decisions and we have to act on them. And we're the ones that create peace or war. I don't mean that anybody sitting at home watching this caused the war in Ukraine. I don't mean that at all. I mean humanity. Humanity as a human race has to show our disgust at the things that hurt people. And in doing so, ostracize those who are the hurters and help them decide not to do it anymore. We are in charge. We're the ones making the decisions.
And I think that would help people who are so mortified with what's going on with this world situation, if they can see that they can actually take action. We can all do something. We can communicate with the politicians. We can sign these online petitions. We can physically attend protests. There is so much that we can do. And I think that makes us feel empowered. And we should feel empowered. We all have a voice. Let's use it.
Marching in the streets is very powerful because Aquarian energy supports group action. And so there's no way to underestimate the power of marching in the streets.
And just to return to something that was brought up earlier about informing ourselves, a very powerful tool also is knowledge. And so, for example, when we talk about war, an important part of preventing or stopping war is to make sure that the means for waging war disappear from the world. So, for example, arms production. Should there still be factories making bombs and guns and tanks? Is that still something we think makes sense? We can push to close those down, to retrain people for different jobs. We can sanction and ostracize those who sell arms, those who produce arms. Now, that'll mean most of our countries, all of our countries do that. I know my country does. So there are these links that through economics and the job market to war. And so it's very important that we learn that and I mean, one level is you just upset about it, and so you protest it, and that's important because that energy of being upset drives you to action and to communicating and expressing your outrage. But there's another side, which is educating yourself and learning how it's all hooked up and where to press, where to pressure, who to pressure, and for what. And I think that's very important as well, because we have the capacity to know these things now. We have the information to hand. You can look this stuff up and learn about it. So there's a lot available in terms of action.
I just remembered that quote from the Bible, turning swords into plowshares. So, Dick, you're much more familiar with the Bible than I am, but that's rather an apt phrase, I thought.
Yeah, it is. And so what we want to do is now say that Maitreya himself has said that he knows the choice we're going to make. So we're not just being put into this situation and left to dangle there fearfully. Maitreya has said that he knows how we're going to choose. He said that my heart tells me your answer, your choice, and is glad. And so to me, if somebody of his stature says that he knows how we're going to choose, the masters, they don't experience time the way we do. So they actually know what's going to happen. Not in the details of it, because we have free will, but in the broad strokes, in the broad picture, they see the future. So they know we're not going to blow ourselves up. And we are going to choose peace, that we are going to renounce war. I find that extremely reassuring.
And there's the hope.
There's the hope. That's right. And so here's another quote from one of the Masters of Wisdom. And he says that many will remember the present time as a time of trial, of tension and upheaval. But seen with the more discerning eye, that would be from their point of view, it is a time of renewal, of preparation for a new beginning. Thus, may men take great hope from the present changes.
Bingo. Yeah, what we are experiencing right now are the birth pangs of a new civilization. Humanity is now an adult. About 2,000 years ago, during Jesus' time or during Buddha's time, people couldn't read or write. Only the priests and the tax collectors could read and write. So people had to accept, well, now we're educated. There it is. Mankind is now adult and educated, and we are prepared. We can study, we can learn, we can gain knowledge. And when you combine knowledge with the interaction of the soul, it becomes wisdom. And we can make wise choices. Now a world teacher can come to humanity and speak to a really adult world for the first time. Things are so different now. Humanity is so advanced. It may not look like it to us, but compared to 2,000 years ago, the masters see this huge difference. And there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, humanity must be ready to take right actions and make right decisions, because the teacher is here now, waiting for the best time to come forward.
And imagine, it is hard for even us and the groups who've been doing this for many years to comprehend the effect it will have, having Maitreya and the Masters living publicly amongst us for the whole of this age. They'll be like a catalyst. They will motivate us to make many different changes. We've never ever before had that privilege of a teacher living with us for the entire age and being accessible to all humanity thanks to modern technology. So it's really beyond comprehension for us to realize what a difference that's going to make to our world.
Yes, it is. And for the Christians who are familiar with the Sword of Cleavage quote from the Bible, from Matthew, Jesus is here too. Both he and Maitreya are here now in physical bodies, waiting for the best time to come forward. They are great buddies. They work together all the time. See, the masters have no egos. So they just know group. They think of themselves as us, we. The masters never use the word I or me, ever. It's just us. So Maitreya and Jesus get along great. They work together. Christians, you're going to see Jesus. He's going to be at the head of the Christian church. Making suggestions and helping get religion back on track. Every segment of society has lost its way. including the major religions of the world. So this is a fabulous time to be alive, you guys. We're going to see some amazing things over the next 5 to 10 years. If you're in reasonable health at all, you're going to be part of this change. Now, it won't all change overnight, but you're going to see the gradual changes come in, like people won't be starving anymore. We're going to get the food distributed for a change to the people that don't have it. That'll be one of the first great changes that will happen, will be that starvation ends on this planet. So this hope is very real, and it's very urgent, and it's very imminent.
And just to end, again, another quote from one of the Masters of Wisdom: "Have no fear. A new world is in the making, which will restore men's faith and courage in equal order."
I love that quote.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Restore. It's going to restore. We have lost so much. And now the masters come to restore our faith, to restore our courage, to restore our health, and so many other aspects of life.
Yeah, I think it's a time of courage and action. So it's putting into practice these wonderful ideals that we developed in the time of Jesus. So sharing brotherhood, love, right relationship, all these need to be grounded in our very systems of living. And when they are, that will transform the world.
I am convinced that's why we and our viewers are on the planet right now, is because we are being trusted to take that action that Megan was just talking about, and to start setting the world aright, to start changing. You know, everything on the planet is evolving, and the ultimate goal of evolution is to create the kingdom of God on earth. And that's the process that's going to start now. And we're here to take part in that and to help turn things around.
And I would say it's already started. I would say that the people that are out on the street protesting, calling for justice, calling for peace, calling for every type of improvement in the lives of people, that is the beginning of this process.
Yes, and you don't need to believe the ageless wisdom or believe anything we say to help this process. Just follow your heart, follow your intuition, and take action. Take right action.
With others. I mean, this is the time of
Yes.
group work, and anything you do as a group is going to be so much more effective than something you do just by yourself. So it's about cooperation rather than competition, which was more the theme of more recent times. So it's a whole change in mindset, really. And it's like reprogramming our way of thinking, because we've been brought up to think that we have to compete with each other. And that's not the case at all. We'd be much more effective if we work together and not lose our distinct individuality. I think that's something people fear if they work with others. On the contrary, it's, as someone said before in the chat there, it's unity in diversity. That is the key phrase, I think.
And that doesn't mean there isn't a place for solo work as well, because you bring all of that to the group you're working with, and that's your contribution. So it's both, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's true. It's true.
And we just like to end by talking about who Benjamin Creme is. He's the person through whom we've received this information about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. Now, there are other sources of information about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, people who wrote about them earlier, but Benjamin Creme is the most recent person to write and talk about this teaching, the Ageless Wisdom teaching. And so he was contacted telepathically by one of the Masters of Wisdom, later by Maitreya, initially in 1959. And so that contact led him to go and travel around the world, giving talks about who the Masters of Wisdom are, who Maitreya is, why this is important, what these masters are doing now, and what their relationship is with us, and why they're coming forward now, and what can we do. So he's been talking about this for a long time. He did
40
that
years.
until he passed away. And there are books, 4 of them free, translated into many languages that you can read if you want more of this information, if you'd like to learn more. He did it all freely. He received no pay. His job was something else entirely. He was an artist, a painter. That's how he earned his living.
You know,
We've got two paintings on our walls here.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying we've got two of Benjamin Creme's paintings on our walls.
Yes, one behind you and one behind me.
Sabina as well.
This one is called Meditation, and it shows some of the higher chakras, the heart chakra, the throat chakra, the ajna center between the eyebrows, and then the crown chakra at the top of the head, called Meditation. I love it.
I think mine's called Polarity, which is rather appropriate for the theme.
Oh, yes. And this slide says that he was contacted telepathically by a master of wisdom. Benjamin Creme was trained. It didn't just happen naturally. He was trained for quite a while to learn how to communicate with one of the masters, the senior members of our spiritual kingdom. He was trained how to be contacted telepathically. And the beauty of telepathy is, and it's so rare, but the beauty of true telepathy with the spiritual universe is that it's very, very accurate. People can communicate through channeling. The problem with channeling is that it can be inaccurate. It's hard, a lot of it's fuzzy, and it's harder to interpret. Now, there are some people who are very good at this, and I don't want to denigrate them. But telepathy is accurate. Benjamin Creme said it's accurate to the comma in a sentence. So that's pretty accurate.
So now we're going to go on to the next section where we meditate together. And before that, we just want to show you the books that are available for free download. You could download these right now if you're interested and read up more about all of this.
And we'll tell you where to download them.
That's right. There's also a magazine that's published 10 times a year, which shares not just the information about the Ageless Wisdom teaching, but combines that with what's happening in the world now. Projects that people are engaged in to improve the world, to make things better, and how people are responding to the current challenges in the world, whether they be political, social, environmental, whichever way. So you can go to share-ecart.com if you'd like to subscribe to the magazine. That's also where you can get the books and the downloads. And then there's also a website, share-international.org, where you can read a lot. That's an enormous website, lots and lots of information. And you can watch videos on YouTube on the Share International channel of Benjamin Creme talking about this topic and many, many others as well. And so we'll go on now to meditation. We're going to meditate for 30 minutes. Before we start, just briefly, we'll tell you how to do it. This is a very easy meditation to do. You don't need to have any prior experience. It doesn't matter if you've never meditated before. You can do this immediately right now, today with us. So how it works is it's a group meditation. So you need 3 people to do it, 3 or more. You can form your own group with you and 2 friends, and it's very simple. These days, because of the pandemic, people are doing this using Zoom. So right now, for example, all of us are in very, very different parts of the world, but we're all connected together through Zoom. And therefore, and on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you're watching. So we're actually forming a group. And that's why we can do this meditation, even though we're not sitting in the same room. We are, in fact, a group. And so the instructions are these. Basically, we sit down and we begin by saying together the great invocation. Oh, sorry, this is the first slide. That's right. You don't need to believe in anything to do this meditation. You don't have to believe in meditation. You don't have to believe in energy. It's not required because all you do is follow the steps.
It's like gravity. You don't need to believe in gravity for it to work. It just works. Well, the same thing is true with transmission meditation. You don't have to believe in anything, just do it.
And also, it doesn't conflict with any other practice you might have, any other type of meditation, any other type of religious practice, spiritual practice. It'll, in fact, complement those and enhance them. So you don't have to worry about a conflict in that sense. And so the first thing we do is we say the great invocation together aloud, and we're going to put that up on the screen. It's a very old mantra. It was introduced to the modern world in 1945 at the end of World War II. And these days it's used all over the world in many, many languages. And people use it to start transmission meditation. And you can also use it just on its own as a way to center yourself and align yourself. And I think you'll find that it's a very powerful thing. Now, once we've said the great invocation, then the next instruction is to focus our attention here. I'm putting my finger between my eyebrows on my forehead, and this is the location of one of our chakras. The Ajna chakra is what it's called. And Ajna is a Sanskrit word. And this chakra is the one that you focus on when you meditate. So we say the great invocation out loud together, and then we all focus individually, each of us, on our own Ajna chakra. And the way to focus on it, if you've never done it before, is to put your finger there between your eyebrows and feel what that feels like. And then just remember that feeling and do it again, but from inside of yourself. And if you notice, and you probably will, that your attention has wandered, because it does, suddenly you realize you're thinking about the laundry, or you're thinking about what you have to make for dinner. Well, if that happens, when it happens, you just have to say the word Om silently, not using your voice, just silently. And doing that will bring your attention right back to the Ajna center.
Yeah, the O sets up a vibration in the heart center and the throat center, and the M sets up a vibration in the Ajna center and the crown center. And so you think it, the thinking is a much higher vibration than saying it out loud. So you just think Om, Om a couple times, and with practice, it's going to snap your attention right back to the Ajna center.
And it's important to keep relaxed throughout, just a light focus between the eyebrows.
Right.
Don't be too hard on yourself if this is the first time you're doing transmission, because it does take time to get better at it. But just keep on using the Om as often as you need to keep the attention high.
Don't meditate on Om, just use it when your attention wanders.
And for some people, you know, the first time they do this, they find it seems really, really easy. It's as though they've been doing it their whole life. So that can also happen. Yeah. And there are only a few precautions. And one is, if you have a pacemaker or serious heart problems, don't do this meditation, because the energies are fairly strong and they can disrupt the functioning of that device. If you have any emotional or psychological imbalances, again, it's better not to, just because the energies are so strong, so they can lead to greater imbalance. It's better to wait until you recover or return to a balance and then do the meditation. Also, you can't do it if you're under the age of 12. You shouldn't, because your chakras haven't developed enough to tolerate the energies that will flow into them when you do the meditation. And just again, to return to the topic of Zoom or other platforms, our chat host has put into the chat links for how you can connect to other groups. Like today we're a group, but on a regular basis, every week there are groups meeting using Zoom and other platforms. And so links are there so that you can find them and join them if you'd like to continue doing this meditation. So here we have the great invocation, and how we'll do this is that we will simply say it, each of us, and mute ourselves so that we don't get interference from the sounds. And I'd like to invite either Megan or Dick to say it. Do either of you want to be the one that we all hear saying it?
Megan, would you mind?
Okay, no, that's fine. I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. And John, our chat show, chat show host, he's going to time the meditation for us. And we're going to do this for 30 minutes. Excuse me, I'm running out of my voice. Oh, Dick, you're muted right now.
Sorry, most groups do this once or twice a week. Some do it 3 or 4 times a week. And Benjamin Creme said, try to work your way up to at least an hour. Some groups do it 3 or 4 hours. Some groups do it an hour and a half. But it's something you want to do at least once a week with at least 3 people who are reliable and will show up every time. And you can go an hour or longer, or build your way up to it. Yes.
I think it's preferable that we meet physically in a group, but of course, in these times, we don't have much choice but to meet via Zoom. there's an energetic advantage if you're physically in the same room and you can get to know each other as a group, so it strengthens the group bonds. But I noticed that it's pretty effective by Zoom. So obviously the masters have adapted their activities to fit the times.
And so just before we start, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much. Your presence is what makes this work for all of us. We feel your presence, even if we can't, see you in the room with us, but we know that you're there. And so thank you for joining us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Zoom, on YouTube, wherever you may be watching. Thank you for being here. And we hope that you found this information interesting and insightful, informative. And if you like this, please follow us on Facebook, on Share International Canada Facebook, and then you'll get notifications every time we do another program.
And if parts of it made sense to you, we encourage you to share those parts with other people. Give them hope.
That's right. And just to say briefly, we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk more about the Sword of Cleavage from a different angle, but we will continue this conversation. Megan, were you going to say something?
I've forgotten what I was going to say. We'll leave it at that, maybe.
Okay. All right. So I'll mute out. You'll say the great invocation and we'll meditate for half an hour. And John is going to ring a little bell when half an hour is up so that we know.
Right.
And then we'll say a proper goodbye.
So the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. So focusing between the eyebrows, just a light focus, and use Om as often as you need to during the meditation.
Keep your attention high. When it drops, think Om. That's it.
Yeah, that was the bell. And that was a transmission meditation. Thank you so much for being here. If this information resonates with you, please share it widely and give people hope. We'd like to thank our tech crew, John in Montgomery, Alabama, and Cielito in Seattle, Washington. And I want to thank you, Megan and Dick, for being here today. And thanks to everybody who was watching. This makes it all possible.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Sabina.
You're very welcome. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with part 2 on Maitreya and the Sword of Cleavage. So please come back and join us then. And have a happy weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.